Susan to please call roll.
Sure will. Gary Boren.
Here.
Russ Collins.
Here.
Renee Graff.
Here.
Lee Gunn. Here. Jennifer Hall.
Here.
Roger Hewitt.
Here.
John Heapja.
Here.
John Lowenstein. John Moa. Keith Orr. Sandy Smith. Here. John Slitt.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Second item on our agenda today is a closed session to discuss pending litigation and attorney-client privileged communication. We need a roll call vote for that to go into closed session, but before the roll call vote is called, I would like to recuse myself from the closed session discussion given my personal relationship with an individual assisting the organizations involved in this matter. And while I have been informed from our counsel that there's actually no reason for me to recuse myself, I feel it's in the best interest of my colleagues to be able to have this discussion and future discussions about this topic without me present, so I will not be participating. And I believe, Joan, that it is the practice to have the minutes reflect my reason for recusal. Thank you. So I will leave and let you guys call the roll.
Aye.
Russ Collins.
Here. Yes.
Renee Graff.
Yes.
Lee Gunn.
Yes.
Jennifer Hall. Roger Hewitt.
Yes.
John Heapja.
Yes.
John Moa.
Yes.
Keith Orr. Sandy Smith.
Yes.
John Slitt.
Yes.
All right, why don't we can go ahead and use the back room. We'll be back in about 5-10 minutes.
pizza with us. Very well, thank you.
Sandy?
So I'd like to move that we go into open session, please.
Supported by Lee. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We are now back in our open session. Next on our
Gavel.
Next on our agenda, we have audience participation. First on our list is Bonnie Valentine to talk about the Get Downtown program.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me today. My office is located just below your offices here. We're the Whole Brain Group, and we participated in the Get Downtown program for our second year. And I just wanted to come today and talk about the Get Downtown program and the achievements that it's made, because I am a living example that the program works. Last year, crutches and all, I hobbled to the bus stop in order to participate in the May Commuter Challenge event. And it was quite an interesting experience. I found that it was a whole new community awareness of riding the bus and getting to know the people in my neighborhood who ride the bus, people watching me walk down to the bus stop and then them pulling next to me and asking me, "Do you need a ride?" And I'd say, "No, I'm taking the bus." And they would give me these odd looks sometimes, as if public transportation, there's still something wrong with taking public transportation. So I've tried to become more of an advocate, not only in my neighborhood, but also at the Whole Brain Group. Within our company, I try to preach that use telecommute to work in order to participate in the event. That you can get commuter challenge points by working from home instead of driving your SUV to work and then paying for parking downtown or not paying for it and getting tickets. There are other reasons to take and participate in the challenge as well. Just by merely reducing the amount of times that you're driving your car back and forth downtown, you're reducing your carbon footprint. And I think that on a whole, what our company has learned from the experience is just that you can make a difference one person at a time. So by me taking the example within our office and participating in this program, we were then able to get other people to participate in the program. And as that continually grows and we spread the word not only on our website, but at our events, we display that we're proud supporters of the Get Downtown program, more people begin to get that awareness. So I thought it was interesting in showing up today that on your agenda you are to be voting on a resolution to approve a $12,000 grant for the Get Downtown evaluation. And I think that you should certainly approve that, and I'd like to see more efforts put towards the Get Downtown program so that we can start to change just how people think about taking public transportation in general. And then maybe instead of me standing on the corner watching how many SUVs go by every morning with only one person driving the car, we can reduce that number drastically. So thank you.
Thank you. The next on our audience participation list is Thomas Partridge to talk to us about transportation. We have 4 minutes.
I am Thomas Partridge, recent Washtenaw County District 3 on the ballot Democratic candidate, as well as a writing candidate within the last 4 years for the 18th District Senate seat and the 52nd District House of Representatives seat. My interests go beyond the core area that is now served by the DDA, include the entire city, entire county, the entire region and state of Michigan. I'm here to encourage the DDA to to go beyond funding studies specifically on the subject of funding studies, enlist the support of university students from undergraduate to graduate school and professional school levels as interns to conduct studies for very little, if no cost at all, to the public. I think that studies are great, studies are beneficial, but they can be used as a stumbling block to simply taking a vote to go ahead with progress. I encourage this board at this meeting to put on this agenda today the item to provide dial-a-ride transportation combined with link-type transportation throughout the city of Ann Arbor, and to join with DDAs and governments of adjacent townships, including Scioto Township, and cities, including the city of Ypsilanti, to provide a coordinated transportation system, including dial-a-ride service throughout the area. And by extension, to combine the revenues, the planning, and the strategies of the Ann Arbor DDA with all other DDAs in the metropolitan area, if not the entire county. In fact, I would advocate that. I see nothing that would bar that from being done tomorrow. A unified DDA effort throughout the county, throughout southeastern Michigan, would certainly strengthen the state of Michigan. I call for this board to put those items on the table. I came here today after attending a meeting of the Ann Arbor Transportation Authority Committee. It's Planning and Development Committee meeting in which Ann Arbor Transportation manager / planner Chris White mentioned that this board was planning to squash the link service. I think that's wrong. I think the link service should be modified and strengthened. It does not provide service to those people most needing services, that is public transportation services. It does not serve, to my knowledge, senior citizen buildings, like senior citizen buildings and apartment projects, as well as even single-family housing developments in the city and the area, with vital services ranging from shopping to medical to social services. By so doing, we can provide a greater transportation service and benefit the city and the region economically. I thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'd like to refer your comments and requests to our Transportation Committee. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to us today? Item 4 on our agenda is reports from city boards and commissions. Ray Detter from the Downtown Area Citizens Advisory Council.
I have 4 items to talk about that we talked about last night. First of all, we want to encourage you again to come to the party tomorrow, starting at 6:30. We hope everybody will be there. It'll be a nice event. But there are 3 other items that are very important. This last month, what we did is we got copies of the hot-off-the-press downtown plan and all the revisions. And every member of the Citizens Council was asked to read those. Last night we discussed those, and we unanimously gave support to those revisions, and of course we'll be there on June 15th in order to give support to that downtown plan, because as you know, the downtown plan and the central area plan are the basic principles that we operate on with regard to our approach to downtown and nearby sorts of directions. And in relationship to that downtown plan, last night we also talked about the issue of parking meters in nearby residential neighborhoods. There was a meeting that was held last Saturday where representatives from all the various groups surrounding the downtown, there's 7 of them, 7 neighborhood groups. They came together, and the groups, there were members of city council who were there as well, And all the members of those groups oppose the placement of parking meters in residential neighborhoods. And at the same time, what they want is they want a facilitated and accelerated resident permit parking system for all the residential neighborhoods surrounding the downtown that do not already have one. That statement, by the way, with regard to the parking meters and also those permits is in the downtown plan, it's in the central area plan, and it's also in your DDA plan, where you support that kind of permit system. The downtown plan specifically seeks to accommodate all downtown parking activity within the DDA parking system. And what we talked about last week is the fact that what we all want is a comprehensive approach to the nature of parking. This badly put together plan to put meters in nearby neighborhoods, we hope is something that's going to pass as a result really of negotiations that will take place between the city and the DDA to do something that's really reasonable to handle the nature of whatever our financial problems are, at the same time moving forward on the whole issue of good transportation and parking in the area of the downtown. The fourth item that we dealt with last night dealt again with Courthouse Square. There were 3 people in Courthouse Square that came to talk to us last night. And they found out, they made the contacts, and apparently First Centrum is planning on selling that building. They'll sell it within the next 2 years, at least if they can get a buyer. And what they did is they presented us some facts last night which seemed to indicate that, if anything, things have gone downhill in the last few weeks. They got a report from the Deputy Chief of Police, John Sato, that there were 26 police reports issued for the building from May 2008 to May 2009. That's a near doubling from the previous year's total of 14. The number of emergency calls, including police, fire, and ambulance, went from 190 to 270 in the same period. As far as they're concerned, clearly our anxieties about the downhill course of this building are well founded. What they asked for last night, they asked the Citizens Advisory Council to join with whomever it is else we can join with and pulling together and encouraging the formation of a task force. I mean, the DDA is concerned about the fact that we have a diversity of housing for people within the downtown. The DDA was very helpful, as the city was, with regard to putting together Courthouse Square. You've got over 100 units of housing in there, and they're going to be losing, just in the next couple of weeks, 7 more people from the building. It's deteriorating. They are not looking after the situation which is going on there. People are afraid to go in the halls. A major problem, of course, is the fact that people are being moved directly from the shelter into the building with little follow-up and supervision. Now, that's only one of the problems. But what we'd like to see is a task force formed that will look into this issue, and over the course of the next year, find out whether or not we can have a solution which will work out for the people in the building and for the community as a whole. Thank you.
Thanks, Ray. We have a special presentation today. Our DDA intern, Amber Miller, is going to give a presentation on transportation hubs.
Thank you for having me today. I think that this presentation will parallel really nicely with some of the public comments that we received, and I will be discussing new mobility hub networks in Ann Arbor. Several of you have seen this presentation before, and I am happy to have this opportunity to present it to the full board. Okay, so I'm going to do my best to quickly cover these items here: barriers to sustainable transportation use, new mobility and hub network grids, current connections in Ann Arbor, hub elements, the economic connections, and some links to regional efforts. When I was working for the Get Downtown program, we are working towards creating a commuter choice program for City of Ann Arbor employees, which involved holding focus group meetings to determine what employees needed from sustainable modes. And 3 consistent themes emerged from this. The majority of requests were for services that already existed. Employees simply lacked the information needed to utilize them. We also heard requests for small infrastructure changes, and occasionally employees were requesting large-scale infrastructure investments. And I really expected to hear those large-scale infrastructure requests, and even the small infrastructure requests, which I think the DDA and the Get Downtown program do a really nice job of addressing. But I was just so surprised that the majority of requests were for services that already existed. And what this shows us is that a lack of information is a major barrier to sustainable transportation use. As are other concerns that we heard, such as non-auto modes are unpredictable, inconvenient, inflexible, scary, and so on. And when you think about it, it really isn't that surprising, and you're all likely aware of the fact that people do not seek out information about modes they don't intend to use. You really have to bring that information to them. Additionally, the issue of disconnect is key. If existing elements don't connect, they aren't coming together in a way that's easy for the user. So if your iPod, your computer, and your iPhone didn't all function together, you'd have these really great elements that didn't conveniently link up. It's not all bad news, though. This feedback also showed us what leaders in transportation and the business community have been predicting, that travelers seek flexibility, convenience, safety, ways to save money, and ways to decrease their impact on the environment. And this is where new mobility comes in. It's about moving beyond simply focusing on the mode and integrating transportation services, technology, and design to enable travel that's seamless, convenient, and easy to navigate. Many of these elements are newly emerging, which adds an exciting and innovative element to transportation. So rather than one car, people can think about having an access to a menu of different options. And a hub grid really helps to integrate all of the elements of new mobility that we saw on the previous slide. While this image may look a little out of place, I think that it helps to convey the concept of a hub network. A hub is a location where walking and two other sustainable modes connect. The hubs, like the nodes in this image, are a way to ensure that all of the elements of new mobility come together. It targets key points of transition, like when you get off the bus or out of your car, and ensures that other modal options as well as network information are present. So that if someone needs to get into a cab when they get off the bus, at the bus stop there's a taxi stand and information about fares, contact numbers, etc. Equally important are the sustainable systems such as transit routes and bike paths and the way they overlay one another and enable connectivity. When we examine our own community, we can see this sort of system. So here is a map of the entire system in the downtown, and you can see transit routes, bike paths, and features such as bus stops, bike lockers, where shifts from one mode to another occur. And then here, the green circles indicate places where multiple modes are coming together. So if we take away that system, we're just left with possible hub locations. And you can see from this map that hub systems can help to identify missing connections, needed changes, and key locations to target amenity enhancements. So you may see from this that you could move a bike locker or a zip car to be closer to a transit stop. And in a place like Ann Arbor, where so many connections exist, hub locations can be prioritized by targeting community landmarks, attractions, and places that the community wants to enliven. So down here we see a simple hub. It has a bike hoop, transit stop, a solar-powered telephone, a sign that indicates what modes are present, and a sign indicating that this is in fact a hub. And over here, this is a multi-amenity hub. It has a couple more amenities than the simple hub. And in that is a street level monitor, which provides information about travel options. Street level kiosks can be used as well to access taxi fare calculators, real-time bus information, zip car rental, and even information about the community's businesses and events. All these elements are brought together to overcome some of those concerns that we heard from the focus group meetings, to increase visibility of sustainable modes, to improve the experience for the user, and to make travel easier and provide flexibility. And if you really want to do something fun with it, you can think about integrating those interesting bus stops that we looked at the retreat. And then hubs can really generate excitement and become interesting places in and of themselves. Here's another example of a hub, and this one shows a taxi stand and also someone accessing one central website that has consolidated information about travel modes, making it easier for the user. So they can check to see what time their bus will arrive, how much time they have to grab coffee before needing to be at the bus stop. Portland, Oregon doesn't technically have a hub system, but it has a lot of these elements. And if you've ever been there, you know how easy it is to travel by sustainable modes because all of that information is right there on the street. And if you can think about how many places you can take your car to and get around easily because of all of the signs and signals that are on the street level, that's what the hub system is trying to do for sustainable transportation. And while Ann Arbor may have many of these elements, a lot of users aren't aware of them because they're not provided at the street level, or there aren't signs at the street level directing people to the websites. And this is a hub amenity matrix that can help guide amenity implementation. Implementation can be relatively easy and inexpensive. When I was researching hub projects, I spoke to a planner in Washington, D.C. who is spearheading this effort there, and I learned that their process really paralleled what I found in Ann Arbor. They overlaid the modes and realized they had countless connections, both the business community and the public sector who had joined together to put together a hub plan were surprised by how easy the transitions could be made. They didn't even really know how easy their own system was. They realized that they had a hub system, and the next steps were simply creating a regional brand, implementing IT, and purchasing signs. And economic impact and innovation. On the macro level, the elements of a hub network are very similar to many of the projects that the DDA already undertakes, which is investing in public amenities. Getting people out of their cars and into sustainable modes reduces congestion. Additionally, the hub network contains many elements that young professionals and businesses are attracted to. It helps to create a hip environment where people, particularly U of M students, want to stay. It can also enhance local innovations and partnerships. Several of the cities I spoke with are hoping to reach out to Google for promotion and technology pieces, and here we are with Google right in our own backyard. And on the micro level, it can be used to enliven particular places where foot traffic has slowed. Also, in the partnerships of innovative businesses, you can create signage, innovative technology, and other elements. Also, you could think about theming the hubs and connecting it to adjacent businesses. So, for example, a hub located near the farmers market could be themed to advertise communities that promote local food systems. So it could have a green roof and then pamphlets and information about those businesses. Or the transit stop could have a green roof. So what's great about transportation in Ann Arbor? I'm sure that many of you share my sentiments about what's great about transportation in Ann Arbor, and I'm sure that you have many of your own. And the reasons why the Ann Arbor community is great, the fact that it's innovative, there's a high use of sustainable modes, the current modal options, and the amount of connectivity are the reasons why I felt that a hub system would be so successful here. Not to say that this approach can solve all issues. However, for relatively little investment, it incorporates elements that have been shown to be as effective as expensive infrastructure changes. When I was introduced to this concept, I was working for both the DDA and the Get Downtown program. And to me, this was a way that those outside of the planning and transit offices can have an impact on mode choice. And there are a lot of big picture things happening right now, a lot of exciting things happening. And with projects like regional rail in the pipeline, integration and amenities are really important. The University of Michigan is implementing transit centers throughout its campus, which is similar to the hub concept. And with coordination, I think that a really robust system could be created here. The Southeast, there are a lot of things happening just in the greater Southeast Michigan region as well. A lot of organizations and people trying to get a hub network implemented in the greater region. And so there are a lot of opportunities for this to link up with other things. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you so much, Amber.
Thank you, Amber.
Can you
You've already-
take questions from the audience?
No, we don't, I'm sorry, we don't take questions from the audience.
That's unfortunate.
Some of the board has already seen part of this, and I think discussions in our transportation committee have already begun about how we might be able to start doing this in some locations around town. Thank you, Amber, very much. Item 6, status of task force efforts with DDA membership. A2D2 steering committee. Roger.
The A2D2 steering committee met on May 11th to take up the design guidelines for downtown. We set a goal of having those design guidelines to City Council in September. The steering committee also decided that they will be overseeing the movement of the design guidelines to City Council, and to that end, we are meeting tomorrow night with a phone conference with the consultants on the design guidelines to come up with our plan for getting those to council by September. And we don't know exactly what those are going to look like at the moment. We certainly have the consultants' packet, their recommendations, and we're going to see where we go with that. And that's, I'll be glad to entertain any questions, but that's essentially where we are on A2D2 right now.
Thank you. 415 West Washington Selection Committee.
Well, I see that we're fortunate enough to have Wendy Ramson in our audience here, who's the main city staff person. So Wendy, maybe I'd just ask you to give us a quick update on our latest status.
We have not moved forward because there has been some concern expressed about the timing with the economy, whether we should rethink how to approach this site, and so the committee is informally weighing in on that right now, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll have the ability to brief council with some ideas.
Thanks, Wendy.
Thanks. Committee to discuss a mutually beneficial financial agreement with City Council.
We have not met since our last meeting, but have had some informal discussions, and I'll turn things back over to you.
I have a few things that I want to say in relation to that committee. It was said at our retreat and in at least one other public venue that the reason why council has not seated their committee is because of the cloud hanging over my head because my husband is suing the city. This is an exaggerated mischaracterization and overstatement, and I feel remiss in not having made some public comments to my colleagues before today about this issue, so I just want to take a moment related to that issue and related to the committee to clarify some things. My husband is not currently involved in any lawsuit against the city. My husband is an environmental law professor who serves as the volunteer executive director of a nonprofit environmental organization that is providing pro bono assistance to the Natural Resources Defense Council, the Sierra Club, and several local residents who have some environmental concerns about the South Fifth Avenue parking structure. His organization does this regularly for national nonprofit organizations and other such organizations with regard to many environmental issues nationally and throughout the state of Michigan. It would have been entirely improper of me to use my position as a DDA board member to prevent my husband from doing his job in assisting these nonprofit environmental groups. And I feel it is equally improper for city leaders to hold my husband's volunteer work for nonprofit environmental organizations against me and the DDA in refusing to seat a committee. And while it is true that his representation of these people is awkward for me because of my role on this board, I have absolutely no conflict of interest, financial, legal, or otherwise, in carrying out my duties as a DDA board member. And furthermore, I find it rather sexist to be publicly admonished and ostracized because people assume that my husband's work is mine. To think that a woman cannot exhibit independent thought and action from her husband is outrageous and offensive to me. My loyalty to this board has also been publicly questioned of late. My commitment to this board is the same as everyone else's at this table. We all put in the time and energy to be here, and to question my loyalty because I share an opinion that is different is undemocratic. It is no secret that I have held a strong opinion in insisting that any additional transfers of DDA's money to the city's general fund be done in a public manner and provide benefit to the DDA. It is puzzling to me that my loyalty would be questioned directly related to this mutually beneficial committee, as it is expressly my loyalty to the DDA's autonomy and to our work that precludes my support for simply writing a $2 million check because the city says they need it. And while I greatly defend the DDA's autonomy in selecting our own representatives for our own committees, my loyalty to this board is unwavering, and I very much see the benefit in having our board and city council discuss this issue in detail. And so since council has identified me as the problem, I think it's best if I simply replace myself on that committee, with the expectation that council will honor their commitment and seat their committee at their next meeting in June so that the formal discussion can finally begin. So at this time, I would like to ask Russ Collins if he is willing to serve on this committee in my place. Russ, are you willing?
Yes.
Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is the approval of minutes from May 6th, 2009.
I'll move approval
Moved
of
by
minutes.
Lee and seconded by John. Any comments or questions on the minutes? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. Item 8 is subcommittee reports. First up is the Transportation Committee and John Mowat.
Thank you. Well, it looks as though transportation is sort of the subject of the day here, in part, at least. A lot of people here are interested. By the way, I see Chris White is here in the audience, too. I'd like to thank him for being here. I'd like to thank Amber for that nice presentation. It gives you a little bit of an overview of some of the things we've been starting to talk about in the Transportation Committee, and a lot of discussion about both public and personal transportation, alternative transportation in particular. We do have a couple of resolutions. I see it's 1 o'clock, so I want to move things along quickly, but since we have a public meeting, I want to quickly read. The resolutions are pretty short, so I'm going to read the first one. A resolution to increase the DDA's contribution to the Ann Arbor Connector Alternative Studies from $50,000 to $80,000. Whereas in July 2008, the DDA approved a resolution providing $50,000 to support the Ann Arbor Connector Study, which will look at the feasibility of implementing a connector as proposed in the City of Ann Arbor's model for mobility, which would connect to the future east-west and north-south commuter rail stations, as well as the various U of M campuses downtown or Briarwood area. Whereas this project has been proposed as a partnership between AATA, U of M, the city, and DDA, whereas an RFP was distributed for this study, and the lowest responsible response was provided by URS at a total cost of $640,000. Whereas AATA has received federal grant dollars and has agreed to increase their financial commitment to this study, as has the university as follows. And there's a table of the commitments that have been increased, and they're primarily AATA and U of M that have made the most major increases in the commitment. Originally, the estimate was $250,000, now it's at $640,000, so it's increased considerably. Whereas the Transportation Committee recommends DDA approval of an additional $30,000 for this study for a total of $80,000. Resolved, the DDA will provide an additional $30,000 for a total of $80,000 to support the Ann Arbor Connector Alternative Study in partnership with the AATA, U of M, and the City of Ann Arbor. Resolved, these grant funds will be taken from 0638 parking grant funds, with $50,000 to be spent in fiscal year 09-10 and $30,000 in fiscal year 10-11. You know, we had a fair amount of
Oh,
I'm sorry.
A second to the resolution.
second that
Seconded by
resolution.
Lee.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Just a couple of quick comments. We had a fair amount of conversation about this with the notion of, you know, should U of M step up further, blah, blah, blah. But the feeling of the group was that, you know, that it's an important study to have go forward, that it is part of our mission of what we're trying to look at for alternative forms of transportation, and that one way we look to mitigate the cost is to split the funding of it between fiscal years 09-10 and 10-11. 50,000 this year, which would be our original commitment, additional 30,000 in the next fiscal year. So I'd ask for any.
Is any discussion on this item? Roger.
I'd just like to point out on page 8, there is a list of deliverables. And among a number of interesting things, I think particularly number 5 that is particularly useful for the Downtown Development Authority is a list of the economic impacts that this study would provide information about that I think will be extremely valuable, besides just the basic study of an alternative transportation system.
I also should have mentioned Eli Cooper is here in the audience. If anyone has any
There he
questions.
is.
My apologies, Eli.
So I will been a long-time supporter of this study, and I will strongly be supporting it.
Your vote.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Question, Sandy?
I've been reluctant to increase the amount in the grand scheme of things in the DDA's budget. It's not an overwhelming number to talk about an increase of $30,000 and stretching it over 2 years does satisfy a little bit of what my problems are. I'm having a problem with the disconnect between how it's really going to serve the downtown. I do like to see the deliverables and how we're going to get it, but the disconnect to the DDA is still a little troubling to me in that it seems to be a primary U of M trolley in a sense. And I understand that the route isn't fixed, and it's not, that's not a done deal, but it is still something that's coming from the East Campus through the State Street corridor by the Central Campus, by Medical Campus, Central Campus, and on down to the Athletic Campus. And I just have some hesitancy, and I hope that we go forward with the study, get the information, find out what percentage of riders it's going to benefit, and then the actual construction will be funded with that proportion in mind. Meaning that if we find out that it's a 70% ridership for the university, that the university is putting 70% of the funding towards this. So I guess today I will support this, but I do want to keep that in our short list of things to remember when they come and ask again for more money.
Lee?
I'd just like to remind everybody that the University of Michigan is the major economic engine of southeastern Michigan, and in fact, according to Wall Street Journal, of the whole state. This city of Ann Arbor and its university provide a great deal of economic development and redevelopment. And just because someone either attends or works at the university doesn't mean that they're not part of this community. So I really want to say that it doesn't matter really who rides this connector if it works.
Renee?
I want to second what Sandy said. And while I agree with all of that, I also think they have plenty of money to fund this by themselves. And I don't think that our dollars are the difference between this getting funded and not getting funded. So while it's all true, that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to put our dollars towards supporting initiatives at the U of M. However, I'm with you and will also support this today, but I think it's important that this not lay the framework for this same level of participation going forward.
I think Sandy and Renee and Lee have all made good points on this. We have not held back in making sure that the university understands that if this ever is built, that they would need to make the match. The federal government does appear to be willing to fund endeavors like this, and if indeed it turns out to be a high percentage of university ridership, we've been very clear with them that we don't have an extra $10 million laying around to make a match. And so I think they're proceeding with that knowledge that that's what it would be. But it would also be that it may be best if we were the governmental entity that applied for the federal money versus the university, or that we're a partnership in doing that. And I think our participation in that would help the city and the university in moving this forward if they were both asking for the money versus just one. So maybe our participation here today can be helpful in that overall measure moving forward.
Any other comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The resolution is passed.
We have a second resolution, which is a request for $12,000 grant for a study for Get Downtown, looking at downtown employee commuting patterns. So let me just quickly read this one so people in the audience also know what we're talking about. Resolution to provide $12,000 for an evaluation of the Get Downtown program, whereas the Get Downtown program was established in 1999 as a partnership between the DDA, Chamber, ADTA, and the city. And in the past decade, the program has worked to encourage the use of transit, bicycling, walking, carpools, and other transportation alternatives to single-passenger automobile commuting. Whereas there is an interest in evaluating current downtown employee commuting behavior as compared against the findings from previous studies to determine how visible the Get Down program has become and the impact of various Get Downtown programs and special events to help affect commuting choices. Whereas this study will also reveal important information about transportation needs that can be used by the DDA as it assesses investment in various transportation programs. Whereas the cost for the study will be $24,000, and the DDA has been asked to pay 50% of this cost of $12,000. Whereas the DDA Transportation Committee reviewed this request and determined that it would be valuable use of DDA dollars and recommends approval of this grant by the DDA. Resolved, the DDA approves a grant in the amount of $12,000 to the Get Downtown program, help fund a comprehensive evaluation of the Get Downtown program.
Is there a second to this resolution, seconded by Sandy?
I think it's fairly self-evident.
Any other comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The resolution is passed.
Okay. Discussions about the link. Last several months we've had a lot of discussion about the link. Chris White, who is here in the audience, has been good enough to participate in some of it. You'll see that there is some material included in the packet. Page 10 shows a route. The number of routes, page 11 shows some cost breakdown information. And we've really been struggling with it, going back and forth a little bit about what is its purpose, who is it serving, is it accomplishing those goals, summer service hours, all those things. And to be honest with you, we found that under its current funding, that our belief is that it's not been terribly successful. I think is a fair way to put it, and I'd ask other people to weigh in with their comments here in a moment. But so our sense at this point is that we need to work harder on looking at all the transportation needs that we've got. For instance, transportation for commuters from Cincinnati, those sorts of things. And the study that we just talked about will be one of those pieces of information. Do commuters use the link? That's a piece of this. So all that is to say that we're at this stage of the game, I think it's fair to say that we are reluctant to continue funding for the link. Maybe that's the way I'd like to put it, but I would be interested in getting any other comments from folks either on the committee or in this group that may sort of affect our thinking as we look to move forward. Decision would have to be made in this next month or so, I believe. Susan, June?
Yeah, I think we're right up against it. I know Chris is here, but I think we're right up against that decision. Sandy?
For one, I'd like to look at it as a reassessment period for the link, because I think that having just talked about a connector service, it may not come back as a link, but the link as it was not functioning well is no longer going to be running. But I don't think that the idea of having a circulator is completely gone. About 6 months ago, I think we opened the discussion about the link is not working, and we just keep funding this. What is it we're really trying to achieve? And so rather than just writing a check to something that didn't appear to work, we said, what are we achieving our goals, and who has ownership over this service? And nobody really did. And I think I would not have thought it 6 months ago we were going to end up putting this service on hiatus. That was not what I thought we were going to end up doing. But I think it makes a lot of sense to do that until maybe more of the pieces come together. Information from the connector study, the East-West Rail might have some effect on what our routes are for the link or something like that when it comes back. So it's unfortunate, but I think it's wise at this time.
Anyone else have comments about the link? Roger?
I'd just like to echo what Sandy says. I think I've been involved with the link since its inception, and it really wasn't accomplishing, I think, what we had originally set out to do. And I think the committee is moving toward trying to come up with a true conceptual plan of all integrated transportation within the downtown, and see how a link or connector would be part of that larger system, rather than putting that in and just trying to force other parts of the system to work with that. So although I'm reluctant to see something like this end, I think it's appropriate this time to give us some time to step back and try and come up with an overall plan for downtown transportation.
Lee?
I just want to thank the Transportation Committee for looking into this. I always liked the idea of the link, but I never took it because I could walk where I wanted to go. So your decision to put it on hiatus for a while makes sense to me. I support that.
Anyone else?
I guess just one general comment too, as much as for anyone for the community, is that I think part of what we've all been talking quite a bit about is the scale of the city, the fact that it's very walkable for many of us, and that I want to point out that there are services available from ATA for those folks who need point-to-point service, for the elderly, for folks needing assistance. So there are services that provide an important function, and that was one of the things that we took into consideration. And as Roger described it, I think as we look at the bigger picture of all these transportation systems as they come together, we really will need to look again at how well this kind of idea will serve the community. But I guess I'd encourage everyone to think about the scale of our community. And ironically enough, and for those who can and are able to, encouraging walking is not an all bad thing either. And so, as Lee mentioned, many of us you can actually walk across a lot of our downtown.
Tennessee, you're living a block away from
Sorry,
the courthouse
sir.
square building. Get on the
Excuse
bus
me,
and
sir.
go to the Turner Geriatric Clinic
You are out of
today.
order. Come on.
Sir,
The answer is no. No ATA service.
please, sir, keep your comments. We have another audience participation section at the end of our agenda. The board just needs to be able to
I think
discuss.
you should have a
Excuse
public
me,
hearing on
sir,
this
we don't
issue
have a
before
public
you
hearing
take a vote.
tonight. Thank you. John?
Thanks. I think several good points were made. Something about the discussion of the east-west rail, is it seems very likely now. I mean, we're being told from both Lansing and Semcog that the east-west rail will be up and running in October of 2010. Well, that would require a complete reconfiguration of the link anyway. Now you'd be talking about, we currently have 3 trains a day coming into Ann Arbor. Ann Arbor is the busiest stop on the Detroit to Chicago route, but we could go as high now as, if we had 3 in the morning, we could be at 9 trains a day. So that's going to mean a reconfiguration of how people get from when they come in on a train to where they get around town. And the link in its current route would be completely redone anyway. So given that we are, the link, I think, Lee made a very good point. There's sometimes, on rainy days, the link's great. But there are so many other times when people just walk from one part. They're going from Main to State Street, they just walk. And I'm sure the university will do something to pick up the folks that are coming from Oxford housing as well. So given the nature of it, there may be something else that we should be doing and rethinking this anyway. So I'll be voting to take this action.
Anything else, Jeff? Okay. And your next committee meeting is?
Yes. We're June 24th, 9 a.m. Wednesday.
Operations Committee and Roger.
Okay, thank you. First, we have a resolution to amend the DDA 2008-2009 budget on page 12. State law requires that we amend our budget toward the end of our fiscal year to bring it in line with actual revenues and expenditures. So this is a legally required action by the board under state law. I would like to, given the lateness of the hour, just hit a few highlights on the changes from our original budget to the revised budget. The revised budget is on page 13, broken down by the separate funds and then the combined funds total. If we go to page 14 on the TIF fund, we have now an actual amount of TIF revenue that we have received from property values. Some of the more significant changes, interest rates were down. We got under income, and we get some facade loan repayments that were not budgeted. The major difference in the bottom line is that the police court, the DDA amount to the grant for the police court facility and the lead certification of that facility was not in our original budget, and that had a total of about $700,000 of additional expenditure. And that's the most significant change on the TIF budget. Next.
Support the motion.
Oh, yes, thank you. I'd like to move the resolution to amend the budget. I'm very good on procedure, thank you.
Sorry, I
Lee.
thought you were.
Yeah.
Missed that one. Okay,
Yeah.
moved
Yeah.
by Roger,
Yeah,
supported
seconded.
by Lee. Okay.
Thank you.
Supported by Lee and moved by Roger, right?
It's important. On page 15, for housing, again, somewhat lower interest rates, and then we had a Avalon grant that had not been, we passed and had not been in the original budget. The reason for the differences on housing. On page 16, on parking revenues, our actual anticipated revenues are slightly higher, about $170,000 higher than we had originally budgeted. Major additional expenditures, we just started up our credit card system this year, and our fees were higher than we had originally budgeted. We did not have previous years to give us some guidance on that, and now we will. I believe the AV equipment is for the DDA boardroom here. And we had budgeted a large amount for training studies and other studies that were not undertaken. We only spent $100,000, so there was a big reduction in expenditure there. We got a little break out of our insurance. And those are the primary differences in the parking. Major one being the budgeted studies that were not undertaken. And the last is on the last page 17, parking maintenance. The major reason, two things going on here. One, we have involved some expenses in the engineering and preliminary work on the underground parking structure that at the moment we are taking out of the parking maintenance fund. When the bonds are sold, that fund will be reimbursed for those expenses. And secondly, we have purchased our pay-by-space stations that are going to, we'll get into in another moment, as well as additional parking demand management equipment, which created another significant additional expense. Those are the major changes. I, and with Joe's help, will answer any questions the board might have.
Are there any questions?
Only about the tiny print.
You should see the operations committee reports. Glasses and a magnifying glass.
Any other comments or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The resolution to amend the budget has been approved.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to page 18, our report on transition to demand management parking. First, we have information about the Maynard Valet service, the first 4 months of that, 5 months of that? 4 months of that. In any case, it has not been successful up to this point. Maynard is not heavily used during the summer, so we have decided for an economic reason to suspend that service during the summer. We'll take up whether we want to continue this pilot project in the fall to see if it might be more successful at that time. But so far it has not been a successful pilot, and we didn't think during the slow time in the campus area that it was worth continuing to lose money on that service. So it's at least temporarily been discontinued. Our AVI card system we are in our 4th month of testing this. This is where you have a card on your windshield, and that it allows you to get in and out of the parking structure, and then once a month you get a charge to your credit card for your actual time used. We've had some problems with the credit cards that we've had on file that are then turn out to be invalid. Apparently this is because the cards have expired, so we're trying to come up with a system to address expired cards in this, credit cards in this system. Our magnetic encoded validation tickets will begin almost any time now. They're going to replace the stamps that are currently stuck onto the parking valid, the parking tickets that you get pulled when you go into a structure or a surface lot. That will, again, one of the small steps. Approximately on June 15th, we are going to start the installation of our parking kiosks, which will be replacing parking meters in the center core of downtown. This has been the major effort of Republic Parking and Joe to get these, select the equipment, get them purchased, and they are now going to finally, the first 25 are going to be installed. We will have people on the street to help people, show people how to use them. I know it's been a big project, but we're finally going to actually see them. And I think is 15th of June still on target, or
We're still on target, yep.
we're installing those. Customer service line had a grand total of 16 calls last month. And I guess I'd just like to make one sort of comment about our whole transition to demand management. We are really doing what very few communities in the country are doing right now, and the parking industry has been very slow to adopt new technology. So we are really having to invent a lot of not only the technology, but also the systems and the procedures to put this in place. And I'd like to compliment the DDA staff and Republic Parking. It's a lot of work, and they're really, breaking a lot of new ground here. It's not like this is something everybody's done around the country and we're just copying it. We're really having to sort of make this up as we go along. And it's a real challenge, and it's taking a tremendous amount of time and effort, but we're starting to, see some actual physical changes now in the system. And, I'd be glad to answer any questions about that. Okay. Briefly to page 21, I believe. This is our comparison of revenue and hourly patrons of April 2008 versus April 2009. And to my way of thinking, astoundingly, given the economy, our revenues are up a little over 1% over April a year ago. And hourly patrons are up significantly. Clearly that despite the worst economy, certainly in my lifetime, the demand for parking in the downtown continues to be there. We've been flat for a few months, but we're now starting to see some very small increases in revenue. And it's, I think it's probably a testament to the strength and the attraction of downtown. So, in this economy, this is very encouraging. I think many of us expected to see parking revenues and usage falling during this period. And it's encouraging that it's not. And assuming there are no questions on that, that is my report.
Next committee
Oh.
meeting? Oh,
Gary?
I'm sorry, Gary.
No, I have a question about, I have to leave soon. I was wondering if the next item could be the resolution, since that would be the last resolution of the day.
Sure, I think we could move that around.
Next.
And our next meeting is June 24th at 11 a.m.
So while you have the floor, Roger, why don't we move this ad hoc DDA A2D2 committee resolution? We'll just put it right now.
Okay. This again was an outcome of the ad hoc committee that we met. We passed a resolution, I believe, a couple of months ago, making recommendations to City Council on the A2D2 rezoning of downtown. The Council has taken some preliminary action and put in a height limitation in both, it was already existing in the D2, but in the center core they have put a height limitation of 180 feet in the center, in the D1 center core, and 150 feet in the D1 parts that are in the South University and the East Huron areas. These are some recommendations. I think more than anything else, there are probably 4 areas that we think Council needs to look at. Whether these specific recommendations are adopted, they are areas that we believe clearly need to be addressed before the final rezoning is put in place. The first has to do with parking, which we have addressed before. One of the current proposal requires parking for any premiums, although that does not count to the FAR, the floor area ratio of the whole building. but anything beyond that does. One of the problems we have is that if you can't build in a specific number of parking spaces when you're building a building. You have to build it a floor at a time because of turning radiuses and ramping. And to start counting everything over a specific number of parking spaces towards your FAR reduces the amount of building and essentially penalizes a developer for putting additional parking on his site. And we think at the very least, if over a third of the floor is required under the zoning, that the whole floor should be excluded from the FAR. Again, that's something that issue I think council needs to address. One of the things that the height restriction does is, if not replaces the FAR as the restricting thing, certainly prevents any massively high buildings. One of the first things that this whole process was supposed to do was encourage downtown residential development. That's where it started well over 5 years ago. And the current rezoning reduces the proportion of FAR premium that can be used for residential from 1:1 to 1:1 to 1 3/4. So for every foot of residential, you would get an additional 3/4 of a foot. We think now with a height restriction in here, it should go back to the 1:1, which it is currently. If you look at how much additional residential density can be built under these new proposals, it's about 6% more than we currently have. It hardly seems like an encouragement to residential density when we're only increasing, and that maybe under this provision be more difficult to achieve than it currently is. So we really haven't done much for residential density the way it is currently written. Along those lines, again with the height restriction, we would like to see that the by right FAR go to the higher end that was recommended by the advisory committee. They recommended 400 to 500%. Now that there's a height restriction, which wasn't anticipated, we would recommend that the FAR by right go to 500%, the higher of the recommended totals. And along with that, the premiums be also increased to 900% of total FAR and 1,100 with affordable housing. Right now, you could put in a housing or a green building, but you're limited on combining those, and it seems we're trying to get community benefits out of this, yet at the same time we're restricting how much those benefits can be put into a building. And it seems like if we want those, we want green buildings, if we want public space, if we want housing, we ought to have a system that encourages people to do as much of that as possible. So I would like to move this resolution.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by John.
Again, it is strictly an advisory resolution, and in my mind, most importantly, raising issues that council needs to consider before the final zoning is enacted.
Sandy?
If there were a change, it's my understanding, if there's a change at the council, when we look at this again, it has to go back to planning and then come back to council once again, which I don't know whether or not that's going to be something that council is willing to do. But there is also I don't know whether it's a mandate, but there's a heavy suggestion that it all gets looked at within a year's time again. With that, I appreciate the content of what you're saying and expressing that, but I think that if we don't get an opportunity to have that this time, we have another shot at making some changes. And I guess it kind of be like the lake, let's not forget about it if it just doesn't get done now, but there's another opportunity.
John?
I just asked the chair if we could take advantage of the expertise of one of our audience members today. Wendy, could you help us out a little bit? Have you had a chance to look at this very much?
Can you come to the microphone, please, Cindy? Thank you.
I met with the ad hoc committee, about a week and a half ago to talk about this. So I'm aware of the changes that are being proposed. Certainly it's at the discretion of council to decide to change the numbers. As Roger pointed out in the advisory committee report for the floor area ratios, there was a range that was given in the report. The amendments were drafted on the lower end. I think he's suggesting that that be moved to the higher end. The parking question, I think that's just a judgment call that could easily be incorporated into the changes. And then the premiums, I think the premiums were reduced consciously because there was a sense that we wanted to encourage the use of other premiums. So again, that's something that was discussed. But all of those could be incorporated. To Sandy's comment, I'm not sure whether it would need to go back to Planning Commission. We're in the process of talking with the Attorney's Office about if any changes come along to the amendments. Do we go back to first reading? Do we hold the public hearing anyhow? That point is in flux right now, so I'm not sure I'm going to be able to help on that.
I'm not particularly worried if it does have to go back to planning. I mean, we're in a period where we have very few or no petitions coming to the city in the downtown area right now. So we have time to do this. And you may not be able to answer this today. Do you see this having any profound changes other than it sounds like tweaks around the edges to encourage more affordable housing? I've been a little bit worried that maybe with the green stuff, we were competing with affordable housing as far as premiums go. And it seems fair on the parking that if they're going to include parking, maybe we give them a little more bonus for that. But do you see any profound changes in this?
Only that of scale, the sense that if there is an expectation that a certain level of development is going to be brought forward with the FARs, that this would be greater. And there may be some folks that have some discomfort with that.
But now that we have an overall limit, that's less important than it used to be, as far if a person is concerned with limiting height.
There still is, by having that much more floor area, you have that much more activity on the site. So there may still be some of that concern. But yes, the height portion may not be as much of a concern.
I'll support this, even though I want to have more time, which I will have at the council level, to look into this. But I think it's a worthy discussion for us to have about these, and I appreciate you bringing this forward.
Anyone else? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The resolution passes. So now we'll go back on our agenda to where we left off. 8C, Capital Improvements Committee update from John.
Okay, first of all, the wayfinding project, we did select a contractor at our retreat last month, and we expect things to get started very soon. Susan, can you tell us when we might expect to see the first signs around town?
You might need a wayfinding system. No, just kidding. Now that we have selected a contractor, we've notified them. They're now on deadline to start producing some materials for Corbin. They're also on deadline to get a permit from MDOT, so they're underway with those pieces of it. I think the first we're going to see actual signs going in will be toward the end of August. It's likely to be the schedule.
Okay, thank you. Fifth and Division, we are awaiting a permit from MDOT, and once we get that permit, we will put the bonds out, or excuse me, put the bids out, and we expect to open those by June 30th next month. So I anticipate that at next month's board meeting, we will have bids and make a decision and move forward with that project. I think that we are looking to get started with it immediately following Art Fair, so end of July. The underground parking structure, detailed drawings will be presented to the committee next week, and we expect to continue to move forward with the design process. Administrative approvals for soil relocation, we'll start with a meeting next week. Adrian, any comment on that?
Well, we are very eager to meet.
Adrian,
Come to the microphone, please.
to the camera.
You're pointing to the door, by the way.
Thank you. It would not be the first time that somebody shows me the way out. So we we will have a meeting with the airport administrator and other transportation personnel this Friday. Susan, I believe, will be attending that meeting. What we think is going to happen, they are going to ask us to provide volumes that may affect their storm detention plans. So there's going to be a dialogue there. We are optimistic that they will see the benefit to bringing the soils to the airport, but that's all I can tell you.
Okay, so
as of now.
that is still on the table?
Yes.
Okay, very good. We are continuing to work on infrastructure relocation with DTE, AT&T, and Comcast. The mess that you saw on Fifth Avenue the last couple of weeks was the first step in relocating some of that infrastructure. DTE moved some electrical conduit over to the other corner, so that process has begun, and we continue to meet with neighbors about easements, and that's going forward nicely, and some things are starting to happen there. So pre-qualification of contractors is anticipated in June, and contractor may be on board in August. And we hope to begin excavating under Fifth Avenue by September. That is still the goal. Questions?
I had just wanted to check in and see how we're doing with the deadline set on the grant money from the state regarding 5th and Division.
We're still good to go. So as long as we get the monies committed with this construction season, we'll be fine.
Great.
Anyone else? Okay, next committee meeting is a week from today at 11 a.m.
Thank you. Partnerships Committee, Sandy and Russ. Your turn.
I thank Sandy for taking the lead the last couple months. We talked about our website with the idea that we want to make sure that the public knows that we want to be as transparent as possible with the information that we have in general at the DDA and how it is displayed and presented. So we've appointed a committee made up of Renee, Keith, Gary, and Jennifer to work on that and make sure that we're as transparent and as clear as possible in terms of how you access the material. One of the very specific things that was done this month in response to the committee meeting was the entire DDA board packet was put online instead of just the agenda. So anyway, we will continue to work on those kind of things, and there's even an ad hoc report about that we can get later in the meeting. The Energy Saving Grant Program, which has gone very, very well. We've had a tremendous amount of response to that to date, and there was a notion that maybe we should make an outreach to performing arts organizations with kind of general grant funds maybe generated from the Percent for Art program that we are actively involved with because of construction that's happening under the auspices of the DDA. Although we backed away from that, we did decide to focus our activities to assist performing arts organizations with buildings by modifying our energy grant program so that instead of a 50% match for those kinds of organizations, we'll do a 75% match. So they'll provide 25% of the money, and then 75% of the money, up to $20,000 total for the project, will be provided to create energy-saving opportunities with those organizations with a building. And since a lot of performing arts organizations do have buildings, we thought that that would be a way to fit within the DDA's established programs and provide that kind of a benefit. We also had a lively discussion about, and it wasn't resolved, but we'll continue to talk about it, some of the areas in the downtown that are owned by private contractors that at the present time actually have parking on them. And the clearest example of that is the Brown Block or other kind of undeveloped properties. And the Brown Block is the parking area, the surface parking lot on Huron, Ashley, and First. And at some point, the developer will want to put a building on that site. And it was thought, and other similar sites, the Y site and the, is another example. It was thought that, you know, it might be a good idea for us to create a community dialogue or to put some thoughtful work into how we might encourage appropriate kinds of activities on those sites. So although there were a lot of ideas discussed, there was no specific discussion or specific conclusion on that, and we will continue that discussion on into the future. We were also presented the opportunity to look at how we might put some additional recycle containers on the streets of Ann Arbor. There are some out there right now, but they aren't working out as well as we had thought, or there aren't as many of them as we would have liked. So we thought about actually commissioning a very cool, artsy one, but the cost on that is rather extreme. There are some good pre-manufactured ones available, and we're moved. That opportunity will move in that direction. And then, of course, the retreat on the 20th was a discussion that we had before our committee met before the mid-year retreat. So we talked about that briefly and hope everyone liked it.
The venue was fabulous.
The venue was,
Yes.
Michigan Theater stage was fun.
Can you get some windows in
No windows on a stage. Are there any questions for the Partnership Committee? Our next meeting is on Wednesday, June the 10th at 9 a.m.
Thank you, Russ. Other DDA business matters, we already addressed the ad hoc A2D2 committee and the ad hoc communication committee report. Renee.
So as Russ said, Gary, Keith, Jennifer, Susan, and I met with Trek Glowacki, I'm probably butchering his name, and Catherine Hayes. Trek is a local software developer, technical guru type guy, and Catherine works for Inner Circle Media, who designed our website. I will say that I think that the committee met, I don't think the committee met because of the questions, the community questions about data access, but I think that was the tipping point that finally caused this bigger discussion to happen. The DDA board has been talking for a long time about the fact that we could do a better job of engaging the community, telling our story, sharing our vision, and letting people know what we're about and inviting people into the process. So those were sort of all things that were floating around in our heads as we pulled our meeting together. Some of the goals that we laid out at the beginning of the meeting were better PR, better transparency of both documents and process involved with DDA business, engaging the community, better data management internally, like maybe setting up an intranet that could also serve the needs of board members looking for data, and using the DDA website to encourage downtown redevelopment, and also the possibility of using our website as a portal to connect to other technologies that are currently available. Some of the specific areas that we discussed were creating a calendar where we could post all of the committee meetings and the board meetings and all of the other business of DDA to make it easier for people in the community to figure out what we're doing, and then eventually get to the point where we're linking documents directly to calendar pages, so it's very easy to say, here's the day that committee met, here's the agenda that they had. And I think one of the things that we talked about that's important to us right now is not necessarily changing the way we do business, so not making a commitment to try and get committee agendas done a week earlier so that we can post those, but to the extent that data is currently available, just making that as available as possible. We talked about using existing social networking tools like Facebook and Twitter, lots of cool technology that's available like Wufoo and SurveyMonkey and Basecamp and Backpack. that can help with our data management and help easily design surveys and make our website more interactive. Getting more information onto the website to be used by the public, and we also talked about the need to balance that against the need to keep the website user-friendly. So there's a point where you can just dump so much content, and if you don't do it in a thoughtful way, the website becomes completely unwieldy, and you actually become less rather than more transparent in terms of people looking for specific data. Some of the action steps that we came up with was immediately staff has begun working with Inner Circle Media to rotate the feature project, which right now on our website is underground parking. And that was one of the things that came out was the two participants that weren't DDA members had no idea of the full scope of what DDA is about. And to them, we seem like we're about parking. And so that's one visual way on our website that we can make sure that people understand that we're about more than building parking. Creating a DDA meeting calendar to show committee meetings and times and link to some of the other data that's available. Inner Circle Media is going to create a feature on the website to allow people to sign up for an email list so people can opt in to receive notification about when events are taking place or discussions are going to be happening. And the DDA members are also going to work with staff to develop a job description for a communications position. And I think this is something that in the past, when we've talked about a communications position, we really thought of it as a PR position, somebody that would write press releases and sort of push information that we deemed the information the public was interested in out into the public sphere. And I think now we're looking at it as more of a communications liaison that would potentially staff some social networking tools and be more, help to be a face and a voice for DDA, and also a place where people can go to get more information, because as we move forward into greater transparency and greater engagement of the community, I think we are all aware of the fact that there's going to be greater staff time and that Susan doesn't necessarily have the time, and I don't think that we necessarily want her to divert her attention from what she's doing to take over this new role. So that's one of the things that we're going to be exploring, is the possibility of putting together some kind of a position, and we will keep you posted as we move forward. Oh, and we have another subcommittee meeting scheduled for Monday, June 15th at 9 a.m. And certainly anybody who's interested in participating in the conversation, we'd love to have you.
Thank you, Renee. Any questions for Renee? Next, we have a report on the meeting between DDA members and Ann Arbor Public Art Commission members. Who's going to be giving that?
I will be giving
Thank
that. I was assigned to do this by Susan, so here I am. John Mowat, John Splitt, Joan Lowenstein, and I met with members of the Commission on Art in Public Places. Some of the issues raised: the maintenance of the existing artwork at 4th and Washington, art for the new underground parking structure, addressing graffiti with art, procedures and guidelines that need to be in place for art to be commissioned, and concern that the DDA will set aside too much of its percent for art to maintenance. Topics discussed: the city has directed this committee to focus on spending the city's 1% for art. Thus, they are not to use their administrative person to assist us with our projects. They were very clear about that. And the city will be providing funds for art in a steady stream every year. The DDA will generate funds this summer, and then probably not again until we have another large project. The DDA, we don't want to select the art of the artwork. We want to rely on others with more expertise. The DDA does, however, want to establish parameters of the kind of art that we're looking for. And the Commission on Art in Public Places recommended that we select an artist to be embedded in the DDA's design process. And we were told that commissioning art takes a long time. The outcomes, we decided it was good for the boards to meet. We needed to hear from them. And the Commissioner Connie Brown offered to make herself available to us if we wanted it. But I think the DDA Partnerships Committee needs to discuss the parameters of this. It was our impression that an awful lot of time and money was spent on process and administration rather than art itself. And so I would strongly suggest that the partnerships take this up And on my personal agenda, I would like to suggest that you look at the art. There are 15 panels there that were a remembrance of our former director, Reuben Bergman, that are starting to deteriorate. And Barbara has asked me if the DDA might look into how we might repair or restore those. So that's just something I'd like to put on your agenda. And that was it. Any questions?
Thank you.
Or comments?
We have a mention here of canceling the August DDA meeting. I guess it's custom that tradition in the June DDA meeting, we decide to cancel our August meeting, so I'm putting the question out there. Moved by Sandy, seconded by Roger.
I suggest a friendly amendment.
A friendly
July.
amendment
Could I have one comment? I'm fine with canceling it, but there may be some, in August, some decision the board may need to make about the construction of the underground parking structure. That if such a decision is needed, we can call a special meeting.
Absolutely. Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Now, in addition to this canceling the August meeting, there was a question put out by our board member, Keith Orr, who is not here today, about a social event for the board. And he said it much better than I'm going to say it about the benefit of having everybody get together in a social context, not in a meeting context. And he's suggested that the venue would be the top of the park. And he had some dates that he sent around, so I think that maybe the best course of action would be for Susan to get this information to the board and to pick a date if everybody is agreeable to that suggestion of Keith's. And well, let's put Susan in charge of arranging that.
I had one other thing that I should have mentioned earlier when we were talking about the mutually beneficial committee meetings. I am going to be, in my role as chair of that committee, making a presentation to the Chamber Policy Board next Tuesday, basically the presentation that I delivered to the full board, so I just wanted people to know that that was going to be taking place.
Thank you. Any other, Sandy?
Just briefly, on the June 15th meeting for City Council, I will bring a resolution soliciting RFQs for what may go on top of the parking structure. So just in case you did not know that, the construction process is beginning, and I think that it's appropriate to start thinking about what goes on top.
Anyone else have comments today? Item 10, other audience participation. Is there anyone else who hasn't spoken yet that would like to address us for 4 minutes? Please state your name, and I'm going to start the clock.
Louie Bullington, transportation advocate. I attend Lansing hearings on transportation issues. The mayor is right. They're looking for an October deadline to start the east-west train, but that is because of the 2010 elections. SEMCOG feels that the new our new elected officials coming in may not be as sympathetic to the trains as Governor Granholm is now. The state is running severe deficits. They have cut the transportation fund, which is causing a $1.2 billion reduction in federal funds. There was a hearing at the House and Senate yesterday. I don't know what the state is going to finally decide to do. There is, from what I understand from all the meetings, there may be money to build these trains, but there may not be any money to operate it. Right now, everybody's scrambling, including AATA, to look to where the funding is to operate it. So if this SEMCOG believes if this trains don't get up and running by October, it may never get off the track. It's a very expensive proposition of the 4 ways to handle these this type of transportation. Rails is the most expensive and it's most unflexible. AATA does an incredible job of moving people around this small town, this small city. To run 8 to 10 more trains per day on tracks into Ann Arbor, especially into Ward 1, into Ward 5, may be very intrusive to the neighborhoods. Again, there is no money right now that anybody's been able to identify to operate the trains, and if they don't get going by October, they may not go. Thanks.
Anyone else like to address us today?
Pardon me, is this period only for people that didn't utilize the first public participation?
I actually need a clarification of our own rules because we've never had a situation in which somebody wanted to address us twice. So I'm going to look to
Well,
Susan.
technically, you have not established that they can only speak the one time.
Okay, so I will allow it today.
I am Thomas Partridge, Washtenaw County District 3 Democrat, Scioto Township resident, former resident of the city of Ann Arbor. Here, as I said, during the initial public participation period to challenge conventional thinking of the DDA, as I have been challenging consistently for well over 10 years, conventional thinking and philosophy of the Ann Arbor City Council, the Washtenaw County Commission, and the State of Michigan Legislature. We need fundamental changes that start with integrity. I'm asking this board to reconstitute itself and to adopt an ethics and participation integrity code that would bar elected members of other public bodies in the city, in the county, in the state of Michigan from serving on this board, to allow the mayor of the city of Ann Arbor, a county commissioner, and even a second county city council member to serve on this board is an inherent, a prima facie, in legal terms, conflict of interest. The mayor and city council person, Sandy Smith, have voted on council matters that have been intertwined with DDA matters and have called on the DDA to spend public money not to provide progress in the economic development of the city, but to benefit the Ann Arbor City government. Those votes and those integrity issues could be and should be challenged if necessary in Michigan Circuit courts and federal court. But beyond those issues and the fundamental issues of who should constitute this board are very important. You have no seat at your table for a single senior citizen community representative, for a single disabled person representative, and you have a public participation period speaker tonight talking about very severe problems in the largest senior citizen housing apartment building in the entire city of Ann Arbor, just one block away from the DDA offices that the DDA has sought to ignore at this meeting and presumably at future meetings. I'm calling for renewed efforts and attention to senior housing, to disabled persons, affordable housing, to affordable transportation on a progressive basis. It is really regressive thinking for the DDA to be funding City of Ann Arbor employee transportation virtually 100% with at the same time saying there's not funding to give funding and attention to very important issues, including affordable housing and transportation for those that deserve and need it the most. You do not have to give away the house. You do not have to give away free lunches at your meetings or free trips for employees.
That was 4 minutes,
They
sir.
can be charged on a progressive income-based scale. I'm calling on you to give attention to progressive democratic philosophy and principles. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone else who would like to speak today? Did I see another hand back there? No, okay. All right, a motion to adjourn.
Move adjourn.
Moved by Lee, seconded by Roger. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.